Realistic Randy is one of the OG callers into Vikings Vent Line. And now he's one of the biggest Vikings YouTube superstars on earth. His Vikings pain is now your game. This is Realistic Randy Rants with Randy and Declan on Purple Daily and Score North.
Realistic Randy Rants. What's going on, everyone? Victory Monday. Happy Monday to you. This is Purple Daily, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die. And, of course, every Monday, I believe this is technically our 9th Victory Monday because the Vikings won a Thursday night football game a few weeks ago against the Patriots. We have another Victory Monday. We have gone 9-2 so far, Randy. Only twice have we had to flip on these microphones and talk about a loss. And throughout the first half yesterday, I remember I even started jotting down notes for the main show on Purple Daily and for our show, and I thought, man, this is going to be the most convincing win that they've had in a long time against a really good defense. I don't know if you saw me tweet out this fact, Randy. I got a lot of @replies and a lot of old takes exposed. I thought, by the way, it was trending and the way Kirk was also still getting licks. He was getting hit hard in the first half. I thought, hey, way this is trending. You put this team away in the third. This is probably going to be a Nick Mullins fourth quarter.
I did not see that. Wow. Okay.
Well, bunch of egg on my face because in the second half, the Vikings basically in the third quarter, and then it came down to a couple big red zone stops. The Vikings prevail. But even when we thought this was the biggest locked-in, convincing win of the season, as you and I thought about, wait a minute, the 2022 Vikings are going to 2022 Vikings, and they still had to sweat it out. They get the win, but another sweat-it-out situation against the New York Jets.
I've learned my lesson, Declan Goff. I, too, was about to tweet out something in advance at halftime saying, man, you know what? This is going to be because we've talked about this all season long as far as can we get that convincing win? And it looked like it was going to happen. Up 20-6 at halftime. The Vikings continue to show that they just find ways to win, however nasty possible. And the thing that I would start with is the defense. If I'm Kevin O'Connell, I pull Ed Donatel to the side. Come on over to my office. Let's have a chat real quick. Okay. The second half of the Patriots game and the first half of the Jets game.
Yeah.
Whatever you did, do that. Just do nothing but that. Because the first half of the game yesterday, we saw blitz packages again. And it got so frequent to where I was having fun with it. I said to myself, okay, where's the blitz going to come this play? Is it going to be Chandon Sullivan? Is it going to be Harrison Smith? It was different. It was a different level of energy to this defense. They were fast. They were getting after the quarterback. They were generating pressure consistently. This is what it's all about. And it makes your life so much easier as a defensive coordinator to say, okay, instead of having no pressure at all or just having it come from the edge and say, okay, our cornerbacks are going to play forever off and play the prevent defense, you're setting yourself up for failure. But if you just do what you did at the end of the Patriots game and the beginning of the Jets game yesterday, you are golden. This defense is so much better than what it has shown us because of coaching. And instead of 20-6, up 2 touchdowns, I felt like the old coaching style of, hey, you know what? We're up. Let's not screw this up. Let's just go ahead and play that prevent defense. And then the Jets came back and made it interesting. We won by 5 points, up by 2 touchdowns in the first half. The defense is the main thing that you can change right now to where these games don't have to be such a grind. The sport of football is going to be grind out games left and right, here and there, whatever. It doesn't have to be that way all the time. And because of the defense, mainly the defense, it is all the time. But they got the W. They're 10-2. It is exhausting watching this team. But as long as you get the win, I don't care. So good things are left ahead. They got 5 games remaining the rest of this season. And I think we did a mid-season prediction as far as the Vikings, how are they going to look? And I think at the beginning of my YouTube channel before the season, I said, hey, you know what? I think we're looking at 10-7, 11-6. And I think when we did our prediction mid-season, I said 14-3, and I said, what the hell is wrong with me? That's a realistic possibility right now.
Yeah, it is legit that they probably could go 14-3 the rest of the way. And what's even more unfortunate is the fact you go 14-3. Typically, that means you got it locked up with number 1 seed, but the Philadelphia Eagles have your number and obviously are a game up on you too, so it makes things a little difficult. And we'll get into another playoff picture and playoff situation later on in the episode. But to your defensive point, what Ed Donatel did, yes, in the first half of that game, and then also, in the second half against the Patriots, you're starting to see that sometimes this does work. Sometimes this bending and not always breaking can work. And I thought it was a genius idea, too, that in the first half, they weren't just sending cornerback blitzes and other blitzes in that they hadn't doing before, but they're putting in guys like Patrick Jones. They were giving reps to DJ Wanham. They were keeping the legs fresh. I think the underlying thing here is something that knee is bugging Zadarius Smith. He just hasn't made the same impact, I feel like, the last few games. And look, he's been around the block a few times. He's probably battling a nagging injury. Maybe as the Vikings get closer and they know they're seeding and towards the last games, they can probably rest him up. So when you get to the playoffs, you got a healthier version of Zadarius Smith, who's been one of the best pass rushers this season. But that's smart. Like, instead of having, all right, Zadarius Smith, even at 60, 70%, yeah, still might be an effective player, but you can rotate guys in, not make Zadarius Smith take all of these snaps. I thought that was genius. And then, there was big chunk plays that were allowed by the Vikings defense yesterday. I think there was like 4 different plays of, 30-plus yards. So Davis had a 31 grab. Wilson had a 60-yard grab. Knight had a 48-yard run. Their tight end had a 31-yard reception. So there was these big chunk plays. And look, the Jets still finished with almost 500 yards of offense. But they were great in the red zone. I can take the bending and not breaking if you want to put the clamps down in the red zone. Now, throughout this season, they haven't been great there. I think there was a stretch even for like 5 straight games where they allowed 16 out of 16 opportunities in the red zone, resulted in 6 points against the Vikings. They stopped that a little bit against the Patriots. They obviously put the major clamps down against the Jets, which was huge. I'll take up a big chunk play, and I'll take up some 400 yards if it means you can be situationally great, which is, I think, something you and I discussed before the season of, all right, the Vikings defense probably will improve from last year to a degree from a point side. It certainly won't go up to top 10. And so far, the points and yards are basically about the same as it was the last few years. But what you saw in the first half and in the red zone against the Jets, if you can do that, if you can just be really good in the red zone and figure out ways to pressure the quarterback uniquely, well, then I feel a lot better about this defense. I'm not confident in the defense, but I certainly feel a lot better if they can be situational masters.
Dalvin Tomlinson returning was great. It definitely made an impact, no doubt, on the defensive line. But I'm going to give you, I guess we can categorize this as a hot take. I don't care how stupid this sounds. I think one of the major contributors in the red zone for us the last couple of weeks is Duke Shelley.
Yeah, man.
Duke Shelley, I don't trust him to play the whole field, the start of the defensive possession, because I think he's not quite disciplined enough to realize, okay, you have a ton of yards behind you that the receiver can still make plays happen. He can get caught off guard, maybe draw a defensive pass interference, but in the red zone, when the field gets tight, and you know what? In the end zone, the receiver can only go but so far back. There's a box, basically, and he's on an island half the time. And it's not like he's just sitting there and the quarterback says, I'm not going to go after him. They are actively targeting him like they should. Who the hell is this guy, Duke Shelley, this new guy? He coming out there on the field. Let's go ahead and go after him right away. I looked these up. The eye test tells you how great he's been, but I had to look up these stats on Pro Football Reference. Okay. He has played so far, as far as defensive snaps, 4 games. 4 games, and we're talking about in a part-time role, he has 4 pass deflections. That's incredible. So just think, if you made it a mission to only in the red zone, maybe coach him up to be better field to field, end to end, but in the red zone, he should be automatically out there along with Patrick Peterson as the outside cornerbacks. We talk about, hey, Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr., he got hurt. That's unfortunate. He's out for the year. But Duke Shelley is making such a high impact playing the corner role that it has impacted this defense for the better. I think that is one of the biggest reasons why in the red zone that the Vikings have gotten so much better defensively.
Yeah, he's been kind of this weird diamond in a rough where he had to play against the Patriots, obviously, because they were so limited with cornerbacks, and he was activated off the practice squad. And now you're seeing a guy who, can be situationally used in ways that probably impact the defense. And it's obvious that cornerback and defensive back is a little bit of a problem for the Vikings. Harrison Smith has come up with some big-time interceptions and almost iced the game before the last play where obviously Cam Bynum iced it just a couple plays later. But they can be opportunistic, and that's all gravy. But can you find another legitimate cornerback here? I wouldn't rule out the fact that by the time we get up to mock draft season, probably defensive back and wide receiver are going to be two options that you're going to have to explore, which is wild to think because Justin Jefferson was just drafted and is clearly a superstar. And Vikings fans kind of have PTSD and get so just basically bored with the fact that they have to draft another cornerback for like the 6th time in the last 8 years. But they don't have any depth there. They don't have any reliable player. I mean, Pat P's playing a great season, and that's awesome. He's having a resurgence, but that's probably not sustainable. Like, a cornerback playing into his mid-30s in the NFL, corner, if he wants to transition to the safety position, we saw it with Charles Woodson, it worked out to a degree. But you need to find legitimate cornerbacks. So if Duke Shelley is one of these guys, and you can use him in the red zone where he's getting pass deflections and getting hyped and just making big plays, I'm all for it, dude. Like, I think Duke Shelley actually could be, to your point, like a secret weapon in this Vikings defense. And if that's in the red zone, perfect. Play him there. Let him put some clamps down.
I think if Patrick Peterson commits to playing for another year for the Vikings, I think he buys the Vikings another year to wait to draft another corner. That is to say, well, you know what? You still have Andrew Booth Jr. You just drafted him this past draft. Okay, you're going to go ahead and coach him up. Maybe he'll be ready next season. You still have a Caleb Evans. See what you have in Duke Shelley. You need a receiver really, really bad. We saw it with Terrence Newman. You know what? However the hell old he was playing corner, he was still effective, still made plays, very productive. Patrick Peterson, if he says, I want to play again, he's having an outstanding season this year, even better than last year, which I thought he was really good for us. If he commits to say, okay, I'm going to play in 23, that buys you another year to say, okay, we'll see what we have with the rest of the scraps with Booth and the Caleb Evans. Let's go receiver in the first round.
I like it. Before we transition to the offensive side of the ball, I know I touched on Pat Jones and DJ Wanham making big impacts too on the rotation. That's another situation where I think that they can just figure out ways to get after the quarterback that don't require Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter being on the field, for 100% of the snaps. Again, especially if Zadarius Smith's knee is really banged up. I mean, you got some depth there in Patrick Jones and DJ Wanham who made their impact. Like, they were noticeable players yesterday in a good way for the Vikings. And if I'm at Donatello and I'm trying to figure out ways to not completely get gashed, it's probably getting fresh legs, right? Like, I'm a big hockey guy, Randy. So like you're doing line changes all the time in hockey to obviously keep fresh legs. Players really don't go out there for more than a minute to 90 seconds at a time. You need fresh legs all the time, so it gives you the best possible finesse and players on the ice. Honestly, it's a similar situation here in the football with the defensive line with the Vikings. You get fresh legs, fresh arms, fresh people not hitting each other all the damn time. Could actually be a really good benefit for the Vikings.
Well, think about this. Coming out of South Carolina, I thought DJ Wanham, his flaws were very similar to that of Anthony Barrs, as in if he gets after the quarterback and he's left unblocked, he's fine. But, I mean, damn near any football player can do that in the league. But when he takes on a block, it's tough for him to shed it. But now it's been all season long. It hasn't been just yesterday or the last couple of weeks. DJ Wanham and Patrick Jones II. Think about this. There was a time where Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin in their heyday, the 4-3 base defense, where if they didn't have a good day, well, the pass rush was screwed. We didn't have anybody. Now, even with a 65% version of Zadarius Smith, Danielle Hunter, both of those guys yesterday in the first half were silent. They didn't do much of anything, but you still had Patrick Jones. You still had DJ Wanham. These two players, Wanham and Jones, they have made such an impact on this defense that even if Hunter and Z, if they have a bad game, it doesn't matter. That's how good they've been. And if you can bring them off the bench and you know what, you want to rotate them in, Hunter and Z, go ahead and take a breather or two. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. They still bring the pressure. So as much as I do want to see Z come back healthy, absolutely get healthy in time for the playoffs, we're left in good hands. It doesn't really impact as far as the pass rush in some way, shape, or form. A healthy Patrick Jones II or DJ Wanham, a fully healthy version of those two, perhaps they're better than a 65% version of Zadarius Smith. They've been great.
Love it. Transition to the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, kind of an uglier day, and we probably knew that going in. The Jets have one of the best defenses in the league. It's pretty rare. The Vikings had this in 2017. It's pretty rare to see really good pass defense in today's NFL. It's difficult. It's so difficult, and it's hard to see when you have an offense on the field and it's literally having a tough time finding players open. I know Kirk had some inaccuracy, which I want to get in with you here in a little bit, but the Jets defense showed up in a big way. What I didn't get was the fact that it seemed like Dalvin Cook was getting off some big runs. Alex Madison obviously has a big run for a touchdown. To me, it seemed, well, this might be a day where you just got to run the ball a lot. And the Jets, on paper, stopped the run pretty well, but still, they kind of just abandoned the run. The Vikings offense did. They forced Kirk to pass when he clearly wasn't having his best day. He was getting lit up all the damn time. To me, Randy, it felt like they abandoned the run game, and I feel like it really hurt them on offense.
They had no answer for the run, the Jets defense. Dalvin Cook over 4 yards per carry. Alexander Madison, albeit just 3 carries for the day, 4.7 yards per carry. They combined had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on 23 carries. They clearly had no answer for the run. And I agree. I feel like they were trying to force the pass. Kirk clearly getting hit left and right. And the inaccuracy issues. It's one of those things where, you know what? I see this on college football a lot. If a player screws up, they say, you know what? Get up out of there. Go ahead, go to the sidelines. Kirk Cousins, I'm not saying you should have benched him. Obviously not. But the pass attempts he had yesterday, 35 pass attempts. That was far too many, especially when you consider the overthrows he had. Far too many, especially the TJ Hawkinson play. That was right there. That's easy money. So clearly that combined with him taking hits, it's not his day. You need to go ahead and rely on the run game because they carried us in the first half. They were the reason why we were up 20-6. And then going to Kirk in the second half and, we'll force feed it, try to get it to Jefferson. He didn't have a great day, although he did have 7 catches on 11 targets, but 45 yards. The Jets really wanted to make an example out of 18. I think they were more focused at times on trying to deliver a big hit and trying to send a message instead of trying to cover him, but they still made it tough for him. The passing game just was not there. Had they kept with the run game instead of, 27-22, you might have won by at least 2 scores, and that possibly could have been that first convincing win of the season.
To me, the thing that has kind of been alarming to me about Kirk, and Mackey and Judd tampered it in a different way, and I'll give you their response here in just a bit, but what has scared me the most about Kirk, or where I'm most alarmed, it's not that his statistics have taken a step back to a degree. It's the inaccuracies. It's throws I thought he's very routinely making in the past that he is sailing and not even close on. And that part I think is concerning. Like, I don't know if a guy who's 35, 36 years old, once he starts losing some of that accuracy, I don't know if he can just get it back. Obviously, the extreme example was when Peyton Manning went to his last season with Denver, and the dude could barely throw a football more than 15 yards. But that part of the game concerns me, where Mackey and Judd kind of tampered it and said, correct, like the accuracy is an issue, intermediate, but he's also, and Kevin O'Connell, this is where it is working out for Kirk, and why Kirk is having a better year from I think a perception standpoint, is that he is forcing him to not take the check down, right? He's forcing him to make an intermediate throw. He can throw a deep ball as good as anyone. I know Justin Jefferson wants the one back that was down the sidelines. That's probably a ball JJ hauls in more than 50% of the time. But his intermediate throws and we saw it on display throughout the Jets game. We've seen it throughout this season. I think it's more Kevin O'Connell, too, and I agree with Mackey and Judd, that they're forcing him to make throws that he typically hasn't made before. If this was Kirk under Zimmer or with Kubiak or whoever it was, hey, just take the safe throw. That's who you are. That's fine. Take the check down. Take the little out route. That's okay. But now they're forcing him. No, you have to make this throw. You have to go beyond the sticks. We're trying to push the ball down the field to a degree, and it's going to make you uncomfortable, but you have to do it. But I'm still a little tampered, and I have a little bit of just like, push the brakes a little bit when he's that inaccurate all the time.
I think the auto checkdowns that he's done basically for most of his career, I can live with that, especially the last couple of years being a Vikings quarterback, as in he's the first and second down. He's making great throws. He can throw the deep ball 100%. But if you're saying that Kevin O'Connell, they're forcing him not to do the checkdowns, they need to do a better job, because yesterday he really locked in. He was on autopilot. That 3rd and 13 play, the check down to TJ Hawkinson. I don't care if everybody's covered, damn it. Oh, what are you going? Oh, well, guess no one's open. I guess I'm getting paid $1 gazillion a year. I guess I'm going to check it down to TJ Hawkinson. That was pathetic. Throw your receivers open. You have Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the league. Give your playmakers an opportunity to make a play on the football. So the inaccuracy issues has been a problem. But when you combine that with the auto checkdowns that he's still doing, if Kevin O'Connell, he's a great guy. He's very good with words, and he's a very likable man. I will agree with you on that. But if we're saying, well, you know, he's forcing Kirk to throw these uncomfortable throws, they need to do a better job, because Kirk is still at times, he still will at times lock in on those checkdowns on third down situations when clearly that was the most important possession of the game yesterday. Compare that to Mike White, 4th and 10, 32-yard completion to Corey Davis. How come he has it and Kirk Cousins doesn't? I just don't understand.
Yeah, and look, Davis was like the check down machine yesterday, right? Like he was getting a ton of yak. And to be honest, if I'm an opposing offense with how off these defensive backs plays, playing check down game works because they're going to get a lot of yak after that. So I kind of understand why White ends up chalking up a lot of yards. Granted, I think he had like 58 passing attempts, so it wasn't like 400 yards or near it on 28 to 30 pass attempts. It was 58. They made him throw the ball 58 times. I would hope to God you're past the 300 threshold at that point.
That's fair.
But you're right. I think Kevin O'Connell's trying to change the mindset there a little bit, but also then you have to take when you see him being that inaccurate, like Kirk was obviously he didn't have it yesterday. Like it was one of his uglier games of the season for sure. And I think at that point, I think sometimes you do have to go back. All right, you're clearly zipping balls here. This is not working. It's a good defense too. It's not like he was missing against a bad defense and like, oh, I'll get that one next time. No, it's a pretty good defense that was in your face, and that has really good defensive backs as a whole. But there has to be some type of adjustment there. But to Mackey and Judd's point, you probably don't want to go too far down that route because then he goes back to old Kirk, right? Then he is taking the check downs of Hawkinson, the same thing. It infuriated me when I saw that too. And that play was happening. I was like, he's going to check it down. He's going to check it down. He's going to check it down. He's going to check it down.
Yep.
He's going to check it down. And of course he does. It infuriates me. Did we talk last week or even in previous weeks about why this team just absolutely stinks with screen game play? Did we talk about this?
I don't think we did, but I think it would be because of the outside blocking. It's just not there.
Yeah, I don't get it. Yes, Darisaw, big loss for sure, a big loss. But even I think with him, this team runs all these type of tight end slip screens, a lot of obviously running back screens. It's still a play that a lot of teams use. I would love to know the metrics of how many times they have been stuffed at the line on screen plays. I got to imagine, without being able to find this information, that they average the least yards per play on a design screenplay in the NFL. If not, they got to be bottom 5. They are horrible with screenplays, and that you can't necessarily just throw the complete playbook out with screens, but something has to change there. Like I don't understand for an offense that is doing a lot better job at clicking and pushing the balls down the field that they can't figure out ways to make a damn screenplay work.
I think they're trying to force the inside screen passes too much versus going outside. Go to your receivers too many times. And this happened yesterday against the Jets, where getting cute at the line of scrimmage when your offensive line, they can't hold up. They don't have time to get these cute plays off to where, okay, Kirk Cousins, a fake play action to the left, spin around, throw it inside to your running back. And that's going to be an automatic no gain or a TFL. No reason you're not going to go ahead and bust off a couple of yards. Of course. Because if you're going to do all that stuff where the defensive line, the linebackers, they're crashing in, and you want to do these plays where you need time to develop and you don't have that, it's going to get stuffed every single time. Go outside to your receivers instead of trying to go to your running backs and to your tight ends all the time. It's okay to do that once in a while, but if that's your anecdotally speaking, if that's primarily going to be your option in the screen game, going faking left or faking right, turning around and going inside, it's going to be a disaster 100% of the time.
What do you expect they'll do with Christian Darrisaw here? So I don't know if he'll play against the Lions. I know he had a red contact jersey on Friday, which was a good sign of him progressing towards returning after having 2 concussions in less than a month, basically, which is pretty scary. That we saw what the Dolphins had to do with Tua after that. Do you probably rest Darrisaw even if things are progressing? Like if realistic Randy was offensive line coach or he was in KOC's ear, do you probably sit him at least one more game just to make sure everything is right before you put him on the field, or do you want him on the field against Detroit this Sunday?
I think if the medical personnel, if they give him the clearance, you go ahead and play him. If they say everything checks out, he's fine. And then obviously I would talk to Darrisaw as well. Hey man, how are you feeling? But especially if he's saying he's fine, which, you know what, even if he's not, football players, they tend to do this. Hey, I'm feeling good, coach. I'm ready to get out there, even though you're not 100%. But if the doctors, if they clear him, go ahead and play him. There's nothing really to think of outside of that.
Let's get into this Lions game and a few other games throughout the rest of the schedule here before we look at the playoffs. By the way, Realistic Randy Rant sponsored by our friends at Park Tavern. If you got an event coming up here in the Twin Cities, go to Park Tavern. It's a great bar and event center. Multiple bars inside. They got bowling inside. If you're looking to host a birthday party or a holiday party, go check out Park Tavern. They're a new sponsor here on Purple Daily and on Score North. Go check them out. Tell them Judd Zolgad sent you as well. Randy, right now, the Vikings are technically 1 point underdogs as we record this podcast in Detroit. So once again, the Vegas betting market having no faith in the Vikings at 10-2. And yes, the Lions have figured things out a little bit. They're coming off a big win against Jacksonville. They kind of rattled off, I believe, 4 out of 5 wins or so. Things are trending up after a slow start for Man Campbell and the Detroit Lions. But 1 point underdogs in Detroit, 10-2. If you win this game, the Vikings are NFC North Division champs. Are you surprised, first off, that they are 1 point dogs?
No, I'm not, because the Lions, their last 3 straight wins, have all scored. They've scored at least 31 points. Yesterday against Jacksonville, they scored 40. And even in that loss against the Buffalo Bills, I mean, they lost by 3 points. So they made it a tough game. The Detroit Lions, they score a bunch of points. Offensively, they are set. Defensively, not so much. So as long as the Vikings offense can make it interesting, it can be a shootout to where you go back and forth, basically who has the ball last, then the Vikings, they have a chance to win this game. I'm not that surprised that the Vikings are underdogs right now, especially it's in Detroit, because Detroit, they've played great the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a gimme. It is the Lions. I get that. A lot of people like hear that and see that and just think like, oh, it's just classic Dan Campbell and the Lions. Like they're a pushover. Not as much as they used to be. And also those bad Lions teams, as we have watched in our youth, those winless Lions teams gave numerous Vikings teams that were far and away better than them runs for their money. Who was under Steve Mariucci, I believe that they went like 1-15 or 0-16. Obviously, they've always they have sometimes been a thorn in the side a little bit. I get why Vegas is probably betting on this, and maybe they're betting that the Vikings come in and obviously win by more than a point. But these last few matchups against Dan Campbell and the Lions, obviously last year Detroit got their first win against of the season and on a last-second play from Jared Goff. So yeah, I'm not too shocked. But I would love to, again, we've said this even though they're 10-2. I would love for us to come on this dang pod next Monday and just talk about an ass kicking. And we unfortunately have yet to ever have that happen. So I'm curious on how that plays out. I think the Vikings should win that game in Detroit. You wrap up the NFC North. It guarantees you at least one playoff game at home and the wild card weekend, which is great. But I think I am a little surprised basically that they are a point underdog. It does kind of surprise me.
They have playmakers on offense, definitely. Jared Goff, I think he's whatever, but they still have Jamal Williams. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Shark, Josh Reynolds. They have some playmakers. They have Jameson Williams, who's healthy now, which I don't understand. Did you see this BS of having Jameson Williams as a gunner on special teams? He's healthy, cleared to play. Let's go ahead and have you coming off an ACL injury. Let's have you be a gunner. What kind of crap is that? Really? He should be in the fold as far as in the mix to play on offense, not special teams, but that's besides the point. The Lions are a good football team offensively, and they have playmakers. And you know what? If our corners struggle against these receivers, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a back and forth situation to where the Vikings, if they are going to win this game, it's going to come down to the wire, which, oh my God, what a surprise. That's been the case all year.
Randy, taking a look at also just the rest of the schedule for the Vikings. So yes, if the playoffs started today, they would host the Seattle Seahawks, I believe, as the 2 seed at US Bank Stadium. So Seattle got a big win yesterday. But looking at the rest of the Vikings schedule here, you have them on 14-3. They did get the game against the Colts was announced. It was flexed to Saturday. So that game was going to be on Sunday. It is now on Saturday at noon at US Bank Stadium on December 17th. So that is a Saturday game instead. Then obviously, actually, you played back-to-back Saturdays. You'll play on Christmas Eve as well the next Saturday to wrap up your home schedule against the Giants for going on the road to wrap things up against the Packers and Bears respectively. Is it 14-3? Are you locking that in for the by the end of the regular season?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a loss somewhere, and I've been sticking with the Giants as that loss. But you know what? They've been struggling as of late. They tied with the Washington Commanders yesterday. They just haven't been the same. I think they should beat the Lions, but I'm going to switch it up. I think there's going to be one more loss. And if that is the case, I'm going to say it's going to come from Detroit and not the Giants anymore. I think that's going to be the scare as far as, well, you know what? We didn't see this coming. But the rest of the way, the Colts, Giants, Packers, Bears, they're going to sweep the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's probably actually the right mindset to take because I don't fear the Colts and Jeff Saturday at home. Giants are scuffling. That's not a gimme game by any means at home, but I think they should win. And by the time, here's the issue. By the time you get to the Packers and Bears games, with two teams that are basically dead in the water already in the NFC North, that both actually have been eliminated from winning the North already at this point in the season, what type of teams are you going to get? And then also from the Vikings side, what type of team are you even going to field out there? Like I think you probably won't have the 2 seed wrapped up going into the Packers game, but if you can wrap it up, that means you can absolutely clinch the 2nd seed going into the Bears game. You start Nick Mullins. You get, a bunch of randoms in there because there's no point basically to start any big-time players. And then the result of that game becomes irrelevant, essentially, if you're not playing for a seed above or trying to keep your 2 seed. So, yeah, like I don't think the Vikings will run the table necessarily, I don't think, and go 15-2. But if there is a loss on this schedule that is guaranteed that could absolutely bite them, yeah, I think it probably is this Sunday against Detroit. I know I picked them to win, but it makes the most sense. It probably is the game that would scare you the most over the next 3.
I think the only reason you continue to play your players, even if you have the 2 seed locked up, is if the 1 seed is still up for grabs, which I don't think that's going to be possible. You had your opportunity after the Eagles lost to the Commanders earlier, and I called that game. I said, you know what? I think divisional game, Commanders, they're scrappy, they're going to win. And then you lost 40-3 to the Dallas Cowboys after. But still, that's besides the point. If you still have an opportunity to get the 1 seed, you play your players. Now, the Eagles, the rest of the way, they've got the Giants, so that's another divisional game. They've got the Bears, which, whatever. The Dallas Cowboys, that can make things interesting. And then to end the year, they've got the New York Giants again on week 18. So I don't know if it's realistic to think that the Vikings have that opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's the 2 seed or bust. And then if you've got it locked up, then go ahead and rest your starters.
Absolutely. Taking a look at the NFC playoff field here. So yes, the Vikings are the 2 seed. If the playoffs started today or this week, I should say, they would host the Seattle Seahawks at US Bank Stadium, who were scuffing a little bit, but then they got a big win against the Rams, who, man, life being a Rams fan, I mean, you'll take the Super Bowl, but 3-9 Super Bowl hangover. My God, I did not. I thought they'd regress a little bit, and I know Stafford's been banged up. They've had to start a backup QB. His elbow's basically been bothering him before the season started. Did not see the Rams being this bad, being the 3-9 team that they are in the basement of the NFC West through the first 12 games of the season.
Well, that gives even more reason to believe that, well, you know what? That was a one-off last year for Matthew Stafford. Why can't it happen for Kirk Cousins right now?
Yes.
That gives more reason to believe that. But when you look at the NFC playoff picture right now, I mean, the Commanders, they are out of it after tying with the Giants. They're right now the 8th seed. So Seattle, that scares me a lot more. I want Seattle to not get the 7th seed. That's what they are right now. I'd rather the Commanders get that because the Vikings, they're going to face the 7th seed. I think, realistically speaking, the Seahawks, that's who the Vikings are going to face in the first round, although I think the Vikings should win. The Giants, I'm not as fearful of them anymore. The Cowboys, 40-3, obviously that gives reason to be a little bit shaky or a little bit concerned there. I'll believe it when I see it. They do scare me a little bit. Tampa, it's whatever. I get it's Tom Brady, but that team, they are so bad of a football team. And the San Francisco 49ers. So, okay. You texted me about this last night. I said, well, you know what? Jimmy G, he's out for the season, foot injury. And I said, oh, that's right. Okay. The Niners did. And then you know what? I thought to myself, it doesn't really matter. The blueprint, even with Brock Purdy as the quarterback, the blueprint for the 49ers is they want from their quarterback, don't make mistakes. Just go ahead, make the passes that are absolutely necessary, rely on the run game and the defense. Jimmy Garoppolo, if you put him on a team where it's, okay, let's open up the offense, you're not going to get very far. But in that blueprint, that sort of formula in San Francisco, he's successful. If you remember, goodness, a couple of years ago, the Chiefs, when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, the week before that or 2 weeks before that, the NFC Championship game, this was Niners versus Packers. The Niners won that game. Jimmy Garoppolo, I swear to goodness, he threw the ball like 8 whole times that game, and they
Yeah.
still won and got to the championship. So although on the surface, it's, hey, Jimmy G is out. Hey, the Niners, maybe they're not so scary anymore. It doesn't matter. They ask very little of their quarterbacks, and they still have playmakers around him. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. They still have playmakers to where, you know what, I wouldn't put it past them to still be a tough out, even if you can get that win in the playoffs.
Look, even Nick Mullins started some games for them not too long ago.
Yes.
Had some big games for him.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out how I feel about him because I haven't been as fearful as the Niners as others. I get that their defense is pretty damn legit. They're obviously a playoff tested team. They've had 2 deep runs in the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So the core of that roster, the majority of those players know what it's like to win playoff games. So I guess I probably am underestimating and forgetting about that part. But I just think throwing in Misty irrelevant, that's not Tom Brady, into a quarterback system with San Francisco, even with Kyle Shanahan being a wizard there. I mean, you basically, if you stop Christian McCaffrey, can you win 17-13? Can you get to 20 points? And I feel like if you get to 20, you're probably going to win that game. The odds are the Vikings would likely win that game, whoever got to 20. But that defense is really good. I think it is a blow to them, but my problem too with the whole 49ers thing was obviously Jimmy G and Kyle Shanahan, they thought that divorce was going to happen this offseason. And then at the last second, he gets this amazing backup, lucrative back-end deal where it gives him some incentives and he gets honestly a nice little payday for playing in these like 10 games or so. But now that they're without him, I don't know. Like I'm not as fearful as I once was. And they probably are still going to make the playoffs. I think they're at their like 95% to do so. So they're in the driver's seat to be at least a wild card. They could still potentially win the West. But I'm not as scared as I once was of them. And honestly, I still like the Vikings' chances. I think what I'm more worried about, and I know the Cowboys got like 33 of these points in the fourth quarter yesterday against a bad Colts team, but should we still be fearful of Dallas? Like, should we still be scared of the Cowboys? They obviously put a licking on the Vikings when they came here a few weeks ago. There's probably going to be a situation if that you advance through the wild card round that you might see that team again in the divisional round. And can you make the proper adjustments from the last time you played that you don't get absolutely blown out the water? And that's what I'd be a little bit worried about, is that Dallas is maybe peaking here at the right time.
I think it is reasonable to say that, well, you know what, after that emotional win against Buffalo, the huge letdown, kind of like the Minneapolis Miracle before playing the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game, it's plausible to say, okay, that win in Buffalo really didn't do the Vikings any service as far as going up against the Cowboys. They were feeling themselves a little bit too much.
Yeah.
However, they still beat the brakes off of this team. And I think it's a one-off, but you still have to go into that game thinking, okay, this team is a legitimate threat. So I don't know what the answer is as far as the Cowboys. Are they for real? Can they do that same type of damage against us right now? They're looking hot. They're getting hot later in the season, which that's the right time to do it. But I'm going to take it as a toss-up. I don't know which team is going to show up for the Minnesota Vikings, but if you can, and this actually pertains to with the San Francisco 49ers. I understand you're saying, well, with Jimmy G, he's gone. The Niners, they don't really scare me, whatever. But as it pertains to the Vikings specifically, defensively, if you still want to go out there and lay some farts like you did in the second half of the Jets game, or the first half of the Patriots game, or most of this season, if that's what you are going to do, if that's what you're going to commit to, and I don't know where Ed Donatel is at right now, because it seems the last 2 games he's teased the idea. He's gone back and forth. At least he's considering adjustments. But if you don't do that for a whole game, it doesn't matter who you go up against. Whether it's, goodness, Purdy from the Niners or even Dak Prescott, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, every quarterback that they face, they can go off on this Vikings defense. So if you don't tighten that up, it doesn't matter.
I'll say this. I am glad the Vikings are in the NFC because the AFC is just so stacked right now. The Bills started yesterday as the 5 seed, and because of losses with the Chiefs and Dolphins, now they're back to 1. All of a sudden, they go from having to be on the road if the playoffs started to being the 1 seed in the playoffs going through Buffalo. Obviously, the Chiefs are still legit. The Bengals are clearly getting hot again, and Joe Burrow looks badass. Like Miami Dolphins with Tua, I know they lost to that Brock Purdy and the 49ers team yesterday, but they're still a pretty good team when they're at full strength. everything is just with this latest Garoppolo injury to San Francisco. Man, the path is here, right here. And I know the Cowboys, to your point, can't underestimate them. Eagles are probably in a next tier above the Vikings. But I am very thankful that the Vikings are not in the AFC because all the breaks right now are being created for the Vikings. And for the love of God, for once in this franchise's history, can we capitalize on all the breaks? Because we usually aren't. We're on the other side of this all the time. So can you capitalize this time on the breaks?
See, I don't feel as comfortable as you do right now. And I think that's the ultimate setup that you should be aware of at this point in your Vikings fandom. Once you start to feel good about this team and say, hey, the path is right there, that's when everything falls apart. I'm not as comfortable as you are because in the NFC playoffs, I'm looking at Seattle, Dallas, the Niners still, and obviously the Philadelphia Eagles. That's 4 teams that could really end the season for the Vikings. The AFC is much worse. You definitely don't want to be in that situation, but I'm not there yet. I want to see how they finish the rest of this season. Goodness, against the Giants, can you at least look formidable against them? Get that one convincing win for this season, and then I'll get on board. Maybe against the Lions.
Maybe you wrap up the North, and hopefully we're talking about an NFC North title this time next week. Randy, any closing thoughts here before we wrap up?
I just want to relax. I just want to watch a game and not have to worry. Halftime, I said, this is so nice. This is wonderful. We're really about, and I was about to tweet it right at the last second before I hit send. I said, no, I'm going to save this in the drafts because we all know how this works out. Just win. Get that first convincing win, whether it's against the Lions or the Giants, even the Colts. I don't care anymore. Get it done. I don't think you can get the 1 seed. You're locked in at 2. Get it done. Play Vikings football. And I think if Ed Donatel just makes adjustments for 4 quarters, not just a whole half, that will make all the difference in the world as far as this team being better than what they are right now. At 10-2, that's scary.
I like it, man. All right, hit the subscribe button right here for daily Minnesota sports and Minnesota Vikings entertainment, I should say. Go to Realistic Randy's channel for daily and also amazing Vikings content as well. We'll be back this time next week. We'll see if the Vikings have wrapped up the NFC North and that they have proved some bettors wrong in Vegas. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Yes, sir.